Hello, everybody. It's your boy MJ, and welcome to the Black Wine Guy Experience. My guest today is sommelier, wine consultant, and self-proclaimed wellness geek, Lee Campbell.
Hi.
Lee is an ardent supporter of sustainable vine farming and traditional non-interventionist winemaking techniques. After working in some of Washington, D.C.'s and Manhattan's top culinary and vinous establishments, she hopped the East River to Brooklyn and became the wine director for the Tarlow Restaurant Group, which included diner Marlow and Sons, Romans, and Reynard. As co-creator of The Big Glue and co-organizer of the Wild World Austin, Lee has been instrumental in the establishment of America's natural wine fair circuit. She presently represents the burgeoning Virginia producer Early Mountain Vineyard, and above all, Lee advocates for the integration of wine and food into a balanced, healthy, and joyful life. Welcome to the show, Lee. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm just glad to be here. Thanks, MJ. It's going to be really nice to spend some time with you.
Likewise. So everybody, Lee and I connected indirectly through Instagram. A woman named Cattell Plevin. Thank you, Cattell.
Yeah. She's my dog's fairy godmother.
Oh, wow. Family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cattell's family.
Yeah, so Cattell follows my feed, and I announced I was doing a podcast. She's like, oh, I know 3 great guests for you. Andre Mack, Lee Campbell, and the next guest, Michelle Maldonado. And finally, we were able
Madeline.
to... Madeline, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with a Michelle Maldonado. Sorry, everybody.
Didn't everybody? She was a cheerleader.
Everybody who looks like us.
Michelle Maldonado was a cheerleader. She was a bitch. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. So that's how we connected, and I'm so glad you're here, and we're finally getting to sit down and do this. And
Great.
if you guys are watching the clips, we are being socially responsible. We get tested, my producer and I, and Lee she said, I'm going to throw off my Care Noel persona, and so we're here, and we want to respect
Trying
that.
not to die.
Yeah, trying not to die, but but it's really nice to drink wine with someone. You have to admit, right?
This is overdue. God,
Right.
Desperate. Desperate times.
So tell us what we're drinking tonight, Lee.
Okay, so my passion project right now is helping to promote and spread the word, evangelize, if you will, about Virginia wines. This is particularly a winery that I'm working with very closely called Early Mountain Vineyards. Winemaker's name is Ben Jordan, definite savant, brilliant, kind of self-taught guy. And the particular wine that we're drinking right now is called Intention. Now, this is a really special cuvee. This is the first time we ever made it in 2017, which is a really great vintage. We only make it in great vintages, so the next one will be 2019. It is a blend of what I think is going to become the flagship grape for Virginia, which is Petit Manseng, and also 45% Sauvignon Blanc. In this case, everything is estate grown on our estate. We have 55 acres that we farm ourselves.
Yeah, well, I tasting the wine, absolutely delicious. Yeah. It has a Viognier or a white Rhone mouthfeel.
And that has a little bit to do with the lease contact. This has extended lease contact, 22 months altogether.
Oh, wow.
So that's really adding to that. But, I also think it's really fun to reference some of those early hearkening moments of Virginia viticulture and winemaking, like Horton Viognier, and thinking about those wines and how there might be a through line to sort of these modern interpretations.
Yeah, no, I that was actually, it's a funny story. You mentioned Horton. I was working out in the Hamptons in the early 2000s one summer, and I'm in Murph's bar in Sag Harbor, and I'm just sitting there, and
Where were you working in the Hamptons?
I was doing some consulting.
Okay.
So yeah, I was just working on a gig, and working on a deal, and so I was trying to sell wine to B. Smiths and people out there and everything. We were getting some wine direct from California, but I'm in Murph's, and I'm just talking to this guy. I'm just having probably crappy beer. No, there's probably Stella Artois and a shot of Jack Daniels. That's what I was doing back then.
Appropriate.
Yeah, and we're talking. And I'm like, oh, I'm a wine consultant. He's like, oh, my brother's in the wine business in Virginia. I'm like, oh, Virginia. I was like, they do some good stuff down there. And I was like, there's a producer, Horton. They make this great Viognier and Cab Franc. He's like, my brother's the winemaker at Horton.
Oh, wow.
That's MJ's life.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah,
that's a lot of our lives in the wine business.
It really is.
That's what's so much fun about it. Is it's just all of these threads that link together. No matter what town you're in, what continent you are, who you're talking to, you have no idea. Everybody kind of feels like family.
I mean, and to give you, and since you threw me an alley oop, yeah, and even when I was going to start this show, when COVID hit, travel got shut down. So my wife and I, we like Richmond, Virginia, so we were just taking road trips. So we went down there for our birthdays, and we were staying with this woman. My wife used to travel for work down there, and the woman, she used to live in New York City, and she was friends with Willie Smith and all these designers.
Nice.
Yeah, totally crazy.
I love that reference.
But then, I was saying how I'm starting to, I have this thing called the Black Wine Guy on Instagram, and she's like, oh, I have someone help me with that stuff, social media. And she goes, I grew up with, who's the big guy in Napa? I hate when this happens. The big guy in Napa, Beckstoffer.
Okay.
Andy Beckstoffer.
Okay.
Andy Beckstoffer. She went to high school with Andy Beckstoffer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just at someone's house in Airbnb.
Yeah.
I mentioned wine, and she's like, "Oh, his brother."
Do you know this person?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, she's like, "Never heard." I was like,
Actually,
"Yeah,
I do.
I've heard of Andy Beckstoffer." Not
Do you
really.
like him? Do you still like him?
Exactly. But that's so funny. That's the world of wine. How people don't realize how it brings together so many sectors of life.
It sure does. I mean, even you just saying that I'm in between Andre Mack and Madeline Maldonado, both really good friends of mine and people I'm very happy to be sandwiched by any day of the week. But also just looking at the other people that you have invited on the show, these are all people that I've crossed paths with. Some people I've worked with closely, some people less closely, but we're all part of this village. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And then we haven't got this bottle, but there's a bottle of red. Tell us about that bottle of red.
Okay, so the white was called Intention, and that was a 2017. This is Alluvium, which is also a 2017. And this is a wine that has sort of been built to showcase our Mountain Vineyard site, which is called Quaker Run, which has some older vines. Older for us is like 25 years old.
Yeah.
Older
and
vines of
Mountain
Merlot.
for you is not necessarily mountain.
It's true. It's true. But when you're there, you're on a mountain. So
I believe it.
it's all relative, like contextually. Like there's a slope, there's drainage, there's granite, and there's a fucking mountain. But is it 1,000 meters? No, it's 1,000 feet. So yeah, it's our mountain slope.
Okay.
It's our slope fruit.
What
And
is-
this is Merlot, kind of older vine Merlot on the mountain. 75% that. The rest of it is pretty much Petit Verdot, which is another grape that we're very excited about in Virginia.
Wow. So as the wine geek in me is thoroughly excited to try these wines.
Yeah.
And so, I've actually done a little research.
Ooh.
And you're from Poughkeepsie.
I am. That's what keeps me humble.
So, I mean, how does a West Indian girl of Jamaican descent from Poughkeepsie, how have you paved your own way in this business? I mean, you're a somm, you work for a big restaurant group with Tarlow. Now you consult, you do events. You're working right now. You have a passion project with this winery. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't at all think I paved the way for myself. I think that life is very synergistic and things happen. The fact that I'm working with this estate has a lot to do with the fact that I went to college in this area. I went to college in Charlottesville, the University of Virginia.
People are funny, right? I was like, if she went to college in that area, it was UVA. Quit fucking around. I
went to college in Cambridge.
Right. Like, I mean, I tell people, I mean, I see. I tell people I went to college in New Haven, which I did. So I don't think I went to Yale, but I went to Southern Connecticut State.
Oh, okay.
Cambridge. But I just thought I'm like
New Haven, Charlottesville.
Yeah, I went to school in New Haven.
Okay.
So you went to UVA. Cool.
So I went to UVA. So I think what I'm trying to say is that I think things are just fortuitous and they happen. And if you're prepared and you're ready to sort of like grab that opportunity when it comes, then who knows what can happen? I mean, I think the bigger surprise for me is that I grew up in such a very sort of predictable bourgeois background all the way through college. Was always looking for ways to sort of fight out of this mold and didn't want to have that experience where, I went to law school and I got married at the age of 30 and did it. Oh, right. You have a law degree.
Oh, yeah. it was a good mistake. So that's all we'll say about that.
So I think I'm always flip-flopping between what is expected and predictable for somebody who was raised the way I was raised in a very sort of like upper middle class echelon of Black excellence,
Yep.
with also this extreme bohemian side and almost a slightly misanthropic side that is always wants to blow things up and try new things. So I think that for me, I left UVA. I ended up in Washington, D.C. I was meaning to go to law school. I was going to take a couple years off, work for some nonprofits. I had already previously done some internships on Capitol Hill with Congress people. I'd done an internship with Moynihan, and I'd done an internship with Eleanor Holmes Norton. And
She spoke at my graduation from
wow.
Southern Connecticut. See?
Oh, fantastic.
It's a
See?
good school.
Yeah. And so I was in D.C. and I was going to stay on the path and, maybe apply to Georgetown, end up on the Hill, lobby for some horrible company, that sort of thing. And essentially...
You would be $750,000 a year richer.
I would be, at least.
Yeah, I know.
But always looking for an escape route, an escape hatch, I developed a love and sort of an obsession with a restaurant down there called Nora. And the night after I had a meal there, I knocked on the kitchen door and I asked for a job. And they said, hold on. And then they came back after they looked at my resume and said, come on up, let's talk. And that was my first entrance into the hospitality industry and working for some of the smartest, crankiest, most contrarian, most avant-garde, most forward-thinking restaurateurs I've ever been around. Nora was Austrian-born. She was a bit of the matriarch of Washington, D.C. dining. She created the first certified organic restaurant in the United States. She was kind of like a poor man's Alice Waters. Poor woman's Alice Waters.
Poor person's. Poor choose your pronoun.
Yes.
Alice Waters.
But she was a badass. She continues to be a badass. And her partners in the venture were her brother-in-law and also her life partner at the time. And they were just really, really smart. And they were the first people that I heard talking about sourcing, even having to do with wine. And thought about food in a way that I had never seen it thought about, in a way that was political, in a way that I thought, oh, I can take this political degree that I got from UVA. I can take this need I have to make some sort of contribution or some sort of difference in the world. The work that I thought maybe I was going to do on Capitol Hill, I'm going to actually now just redirect it into food and wine. But it means that anytime I work in food and wine, there has to be some greater purpose. There has to be some greater, mission that I'm part of. And so what sort of always would happen was that anytime I was kind of caught up in a project, it always has to be part of like moving the ball forward.
Wow, my producer she's just so happy with herself right now. Just so you guys know. So what was it about that meal that you said, I want to work here? I'm just curious.
It was the first menu that I had ever seen that listed all of the farmers on the back. And it was the early days of people even listing their greens by the farmer on the front. So, she would say, oh, this farm made these greens, and that's how you would describe it. But on the back, it would have this whole, so it was like she was giving as much credence to the chef and the servers and herself as she was to the way that she sourced the food. And I knew that was everything. And when I worked for her, she was very mean. But she was very demanding, and she was also very lovable. And she and her partners taught me how to think about food and wine, and taught me that it didn't just have to be this thing that, it wasn't just about gluttony and pleasure. Like there was something else, but it could be also about gluttony and pleasure.
No, I get that. and like, what year was this? Like, she's doing all this.
I'm working for her in the late '90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but she had been at it for several years before.
Totally reminds me of a skit on Portlandia where they took it to the extreme of like
the chicken. They went to go see the chicken
farm, and then that's like a cult. And
I love it. I love
the guys
that's
wearing
everybody's
a dress.
Yeah, that's my favorite skit on Portlandia. That's one of my favorite skits on Portlandia.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
But I also really,
and also you have to remember that I am West Indian. My mom born in Trinidad and my father in Jamaica. So if I'm going to buck the rules, I have to be really sure about why I'm doing it. And for me, somebody who's built the way I am, I just have to have this really personal connection to it.
Yeah, and I was going to say that that was one of the things when I first got into the wine business, like shocked. Like you think like you think you're like, oh, they're just a waiter or they're just a cook.
Yeah.
There are so many just brilliant people in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
Like ridiculous. Like you from UVA. Like we had Robert Boron, who went to NYU and got accepted to NYU Law School. And just people who are just.
They could have done a million different things.
When I worked at Akron Merrill. Like those guys all went to Columbia or NYU. Like it's ludicrous. Like that the public could think, oh, it's just wine, it's just food. Like they don't know how deep it goes. And I really have a lot of respect for what you're saying about and I know being West Indian because like the other people who look like me, black people, where most of them were like West Indian. Like there's a lot of pressure.
Where you grew up.
When I went to Rutgers, if there was like I think there was like 30 black students, it was like 20
That's
women,
where you went to law
women.
school.
Yeah, I went to law school. Yeah, 20 women and like 15 of them were West Indian. Like it's just culturally coming out of the British system, education's really a little bit
Very
different than a little bit different than African Americans. People don't realize it. I realized that in graduate school. So yeah, if you're gonna buck the thing, you got to
be really sure about what you're doing and why you're doing it, because every time you go see your family, they're going to be shaking their head at you. And also it's quite loaded to go into service as a person of color.
Well, I said that too
Yeah.
in one of my podcasts. I was like, people said you should be. I was never a waiter. I was like, I can't wait on white people, bro.
Well, here's the thing, and now I'm going to sound a little snobby, but let's be honest, I'm a little snobby. So I was never a server.
Right.
I was never a server. It was not for me. So my first job was being the chef's assistant. Mm-hmm. And then I came to New York and I worked at a lot of different, like Jamaican part of me, a lot of different jobs all at the same time, which we might get into later.
You only got 3 jobs.
Yes.
You're a lazy woman.
Yes, you lazy lima. And so I worked as a hostess, and then I got promoted to maitre d', and then I became a floor manager, and then I became a sommelier, and then I became a wine director. I never served.
Yeah, no, and I'm not mad at you for
Yeah.
that. Like, I mean, I did a Somm gig out in Santa Barbara, out in Montecito. I was the manager of the wine store, and then I would come over at night and work on the floor, and I loved that. And I would expedite,
Mm-hmm.
and then he wanted me to be manager of the whole restaurant, but that's fine. But I just knew that wasn't for me because it is a little loaded. Mm-hmm. Because you know
it's loaded. It's like my grandmother all worked in service.
Right.
My grandmother's all cleaned houses.
Right. My mother did days work.
Right.
And little
Did
kids
people's
are,
laundry.
little people calling her
That's right.
Alma.
Yeah.
What?
What's that? Why?
What?
Oh, her first name.
Her first name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
3 years
what?
old.
Yeah, 3 years old.
So you had to pick and choose. It couldn't just be, I like food, I'm going to go be a server somewhere, right? Like you had to be like, I have a purpose and I know what I'm doing and I'm going to go into management, but ish. I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing. I was just figuring it out as I went along. But
you figured it out pretty well. So you said you got a really good foundation.
Yes, I got this amazing foundation in DC with the Pouillon D'Amato families. And then...
Sounds like a mafia family.
Yeah, they kind of are. Well, D'Amato, they're from Jersey.
Oh, they are.
I don't know. He works with like Norwegian salmon now, so I just feel like salmon mafia.
I'm sure there's a racket.
So came to New York. And that's when I had like 18 jobs. But I had a lot of jobs, partially because for a long time, I only stayed at jobs 4 to 6 months. And that's...
we have that in common.
That suits me as a Gemini and as just a me. I'm always changing jobs. I loved this industry because you could do that without anybody judging you. You're just like, I'm just on my way up, But mostly I just get bored really quickly, and I'm always looking for new challenges and new stimulation. And so I could have a lot of jobs. And I came to New York, and I remember I either wanted to work at one of 2 restaurants. One was I either wanted to work at Savoy for Peter Hoffman, and then the other restaurant was I wanted to work for Diane Forley at Verbena. And just ends up I met Diane first, and I started working there. But also at the same time, I was working for Amy Scherber, who owns Amy's Bread, as her morning manager, overseeing the bakery and wholesale operations, and then lots of other jobs after that. Yeah, but at this point, wine was not even nowhere nearby.
Yeah, you're just
I loved food. I loved service. And wine still felt like a white man's enterprise. And most of the sommeliers, I did listen to a little bit of Robert Bohr's podcast the other day, and I know Robert because I worked at Nick and Tony's with the wine program that he put together there. But he he was right in that there, in the early days, like if there were somms, they were French or German or they're Franz and Pierre, and it wasn't everybody. There wasn't a somm job everywhere. I mean, we're probably about to go into a reality where there's also not a somm job everywhere because there's not really like fine dining.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But in that moment, there were not that many sommeliers, and if there were sommeliers, they were European and white, or they were like my ex-boyfriend, white boys from Owings Mills, Maryland, trying to act like they were European. Sorry, Aaron.
First, I was like, did she date Dustin? Because Dustin's from Maryland.
No, but so you didn't see yourself. I knew a couple of black women that were in the biz, more on like the distribution side. They were just mean to me. They did not care about the mentorship thing. And you start putting together your network where you can.
Right.
And the network was largely white. Lots of men, some women.
Yeah.
We had some really great, a couple of great sommeliers in the city at that point, Beth Von Benz and Susan LaRosa, that were white women doing great things with wine programs. But other than that, I mean, my first few mentors were Charlie Woods, who owned Bon Ami Imports. Well, he didn't at that time. At that time, he was the sales director for Vineyard Expressions, which was an early distributor. And then lucky enough to meet Terry Thies early days. And
we gotta talk about Terry Thies.
And Joe Dresner and the owners of Chamber Street Wine, Jamie and David, Jamie Wolf and David Lilly.
Those are all.
So I think those were all white men, right?
Well,
seems like it. And those, but I say that.
I'd say it's welcome to the real world.
But they were always rooting for me and pulling for me.
Right.
And Beth was always pulling for me. Anita Casson was always pulling for me. Bonnie Munchin, who was the GM at Nick and Tony's in East Hampton. So, I mean, it's great to have, people of color mentoring, but when they're not, you got to figure the fuck out.
Yeah, no, I wholly agree with that. I mean, when you listen to, even if you watch the Somm series and you listen to Dylan, he said, I saw that guy who wasn't black, and I was like, I want to be that guy, that suit, that watch. Like, you have to have an ability to forecast yourself on, onto the screen.
You have to take it.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, that's the line in The Departed, Jack Nicholson. He's like, The Departed. In the beginning, he says, the one thing he said, the black chap you haven't learned is you got to take it.
Yeah.
You got to take it.
And I mean, if I have any issues with the moment that we're in right now, is I feel like there's a lot of people that are still waiting for permission and waiting for somebody to make a way. And my thing is that I'm happy to I've always tried to make a way for people who come behind me, but I need them to do more than I did. So I need them to still fucking go take it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's not enough for me to clear the waters.
Right.
Go fucking take it. Snatch it out of their hands.
Right.
Go.
Right.
So,
a great book I love. And I don't know how much you read these days, but
I don't.
There's a book called "So Good They Can't Ignore You," right? Be so good they can't ignore you. And clearly, as we unpack your career, you've done that. People have done that, and I believe if one person does it, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Now there are paths that are easier because you might have more access early on, or access to more resources. But the reality is, like you said, we are in this moment, and I just hope people are going to be on their game and really next level this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm here to help, and I'm always here to support. But, certainly, I think the thing is that I also understand that I was born into a certain amount of privilege.
Sure.
And I often forget that and sort of need to re-acknowledge that.
Right.
That both of my parents went to college. My dad went to City, my mom went to NYU. We had an expanded family that was very supportive, and how West Indians do. We all take care of each other. You always have somewhere to stay. You always have family to help you. You're never poor, blah, blah, blah. So we did have that, and I have to acknowledge it. I have to acknowledge that as living in the West Indian diaspora means that you have cousins in London, Switzerland, Toronto, Quebec, Miami.
Mm-hmm.
So you're already seeing the world
Mm-hmm.
differently.
Mm-hmm.
You're already starting to be like, oh, I can live in any of those places. All my cousins live there.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You have you don't just have black cousins, you have white cousins.
Right.
You have Jewish cousins.
Right.
Because, a lot of these countries, many, it's about the nationalism of being Jamaica or Trini, but everybody's a different color.
Yep.
So I know that I did come into this already knowing that I was entitled to do it.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's, I think I've had some experience in, and like talking with Shakira, Shakira's like, I went to private school, you know, Andre went to private school. I grew up in an affluent county in New Jersey. My dad worked at the post office, but I grew up with an intact family.
Yeah.
And that's what I grew up around white people. That's a different experience. You are going to experience more.
Yeah.
And I get that because now I work with kids who work in the inner city, and I'm like, you got to get out of it. There's more to the world than what you see, and not good or bad, but it's just exposure.
And then I was also lucky, and in fact, Shakira's family now lives about 5 miles from where my family lives upstate, which is crazy. But
season 1 has been so tight. I don't even know how this has happened, but that's so dope.
But I was also lucky, if one could say they were lucky to have their parents divorced. But my parents divorced. My mom hightailed it back to the city. So now I'm lucky enough to not just be that black, white girl upstate. Sorry, we know about that.
No, this is so dope.
But I'm in Harlem on a regular basis.
Right.
I'm in Harlem every other week. And that balanced
the real
me.
Harlem. We're talking pre-Clinton. 2000 Harlem. We're talking.
No, we're talking 70s, 80s Harlem.
We're talking Egyptian musk incense burning down the street. We're talking
Harlem Week, Harlem.
The 12 tribes of Judah brothers out there railing.
Grant's Tomb, Jazzmobile.
Oh yeah,
Harlem.
I used to go up to Grant's Tomb all the time back in the day. Yeah.
Spanish Harlem. We called it La Boricua, Spanish Harlem. And every Latino person, my grandmother just said they were Puerto Rican. Everybody was Puerto Rican. It doesn't matter. If they weren't black and they weren't white, they were Puerto Rican.
And we have video. You may see this video. This might be a clip, but and we're both complexion. Where did just people just come up to you, start speaking Spanish to you on the subway? That used to have shit on it all the time.
That didn't happen.
No, okay, because you could easily be Dominican. You could easily be Dominican.
Right. No, somehow I didn't pass. But yeah. So yeah, I was very lucky that I had a very varied experience. My mom also worked at Columbia for 20 years, so I was always part of this sort of academia space. Studied in Paris when I was undergrad. So yeah, I know I had some fucking privilege. I get it, and I am very grateful for the people that made that made that happen for me.
100%. So. You're in New York. You're getting a few breaks. You're doing some bread stuff in the morning. Got this gig here, that gig there. What was your big break in New York?
It was just the doors just kept opening. Pretty much anywhere I wanted to go, anywhere I wanted to work, the doors kept opening. And so I think the turning point for me, it was I was at. I think there was a couple of things that happened early on that helped establish the path. One was that I was working at a restaurant called Gotham Bar and Grill, and I was a floor manager, and it just wasn't speaking to me. I thought that I really needed to work fine dining. I'd worked in a few more quirky restaurants, and then I was like, oh, maybe I need to push myself, work more fine dining. So working fine dining, and I don't know, it just was, the environment for me was very static. It just didn't feel dynamic. And the people that we waited on, I just thought they were boring. I don't know. I just felt a little bit stuck. And also I hated the people I was working with. They were very assholey. So Charlie Woods at that point said, you want to get out of restaurants? Come work for me at this distributorship. It was one of the early really boutique import distributors in New York called Vineyard Expressions, run by a guy named Mark Whitmore, who happened to be an entomologist at Cornell University, but did this wine import thing in his side, as a side hustle. And that really opened it up for me, because I said, I don't know how to sell wine. At that point, I think I had probably already had my either started or was in the middle of getting my sommelier certification from the American Sommelier Association, the ASA, which was really hot in New York at that point. And so, but that opened up wine to me, like specifically, like you could actually like specialize in wine. Like I didn't really think of that for myself. And this guy, Charlie's like, you could sell anything, just come sell some wine.
Was there anything really cool in that book? Did you say one of the early?
Yeah. It's two producers stand out in particular, and I know that you're not part of the whole natural thing, but I'm going to drag you there a little bit. Is one of the OGs in the Loire Valley named Claude Courtois.
Okay.
And then
I do love the Loire Valley, though.
Yes, and then Northern Rhone producer named Ardent Rebo.
Okay.
And those are two icons of the natural wine movement. But at the time, it was just like this funky, crazy wine, and I was like, I don't know how to sell this shit. But then we had more classical things. I sold a lot of Southern Burgundy, Marange and Santenay and things like that, and a little bit of everything. So it was a great book. It was sort of a hip book at the time, and that was a really great sort of like opportunity to get into wine. And then I think the second thing that probably happened, then I went back to restaurants for a while. And when I came back out of restaurants again, I worked at Chamber Street Wines, which is, one of the most important wine retailers in the United States. And I worked for them in year 2 of their existence, which was 2002. Mm-hmm. And that set me up tremendously. And then once I worked there, that was it.
That was it?
Yeah, because, it's the same thing that happened to me at Restaurant Nora in Washington, D.C. These people taught me how to think about wine. How to have my own opinion and how to learn about things I didn't even know existed. The wine industry was going through some transition at that point. There was a lot of cult wines, whether you're talking about Nab Cabs, whether you're talking about Priorato. Burgundy was starting, to become very important. Obviously, Bordeaux had been there. Piedmont was starting to become very important. And so these guys were like, hey, look, these are the classics. These are important to us. We love these wines. And also, we want to be part of these like emerging regions. And so we're going to go out and source and figure out who's important in all these other regions. And we're going to like put our money where our mouth is. And so that was just a really great thing to see, that you could be part of this process. Maybe that's what I want to do with Virginia.
Right on. So I want to delve into that a little bit more about Chamber Street, because retail, I think, is really where, if you want to learn wine, that's a great place to learn wine. So we got to take.
And imagine this. Oh, we're taking a break first.
We're going to take a quick break, and then and I'm going to stop you right there, and we'll be back in a second. All right?
Okay. So you were consulting in the early aughts in the Hamptons?
Yes. All right. We'll unpack that. Okay, we are back.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chamber Street, you said that you worked. Chamber Street, I know, is an iconic retailer in New York City and the country, matter of fact. And you were there in year
2002.
Year 2 of their existence. And they gave you this great canvas. So tell me, like...
Well, there was 2 things that happened at Chamber Street that I thought were fantastic. Number one, Chamber Street was the first store that was like high and low, right? For a long time, the top wine retailers, whether it's Acker or Sherry Lehman or whoever, it was all this high-end stuff, right? And that was sort of their focus. Like,
well,
you're going to stop me there?
I am, because we did have, Chateau Jean Gervais, which is like a direct import.
That's right. That's where you make your money.
Exactly, make your money. Comes in through USA Imports, and they call and
Fruit
like,
of the vine.
People are like, we want a board. I'm like, oh my God, we have this thing. It's an exclusive.
Drinks
it's exclusive.
Like
it drinks
a $40 Saint Emilion.
Exactly. It drinks like a first growth Pauillac, and it's only $14 a bottle. And it's Chateau Jean Gervais, and you can have it for and on a case it comes down to $12.99.
Right.
So anyway, yes.
I mean, I think what I'd say to that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was still sort of like the low end wine was still modeling on the high end wine.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
No, I agree.
Whereas I felt like at Chamber Street, it was like, like whatever, like everything's we're gonna look at every region, every producer, every level, and everything came together there. So they taught me about.
Like you mentioned like Priorat, like the early Eric Solomon stuff, like Clorat, like talking wines that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And were a lot of those were organic, biodynamic, and not certified. But like these are type of wines that like natural wine. People are like, but Parker's given 99. So I mean, these wines were like ridiculous.
Well,
They crossed a swath.
Even in pre-rot, you see what happened is that my first wine trip ever was to Spain, and when I was working at Chambers Street. And I think a lot of what happened with pre-rot was that they chased the dragon, and then they had to rein it back in, right? So I think pre-rot is of a climate, and the grape varieties that they use there are just always going to be ripe and big and bombastic and spicy. It's a Mediterranean climate.
Yep, exactly.
With the licorella soils and all of, full ripeness. But, some of those producers really went after those points. And I think they shot themselves in the foot because you can only, the bubble can only grow so much before it bursts. And now what I think you see coming out of Priorato and some of those lesser known appellations that are right up against Priorato are wines that are appropriate for that climate, for that terroir.
Right, and that, you make a very good point. I mean, a lot of people just rail against wines that are, but there is a lot of wines that are natural 15% alcohol just because they're climate.
And you know what? That is something that I really want to talk about. A little bit happens in Virginia. We have really a fucking hot growing season. And so we get alcohol, and that's just what it is. And you can try to pick to control alcohol, but if you're not picking for physiological ripeness and you're not picking for when the grapes really need to be picked, then what are you doing? Then you're negating the terroir. So, that is, I do have issues with the natural wine movement. One of them is that people chase style.
Yeah, it's got to be 12.5% alcohol.
No, like here's the thing. Like we went from, everything had to be new oak in California and everything had to be rich and ripe and ready to drink in Bordeaux. And then the flip side of that is everything has to be orange, everything has to be murky, and everything has to be 12% alcohol with carbonic maceration. These are dogmatic styles that we, if we are savvy tastemakers, I get, if you're a consumer and you just want something that's fun and, but as tastemakers, as the people that are, the middlemen, the middle women buying the wines and distributing the wines, I think we have like a real opportunity and a real responsibility to not just get caught up in trends. And to me, the most beautiful thing of wine is really being able to experience another culture, another space, another moment in time. And I want to be able to share that with people. I don't want to just share like wine as though it's a pair of shoes.
Right. Yeah. No, it is. It's a portal to a different time and
different
place. And I just poured a glass of this red, and I would not believe this. I would not.
Mountain Merlot.
I would not believe this is from Virginia.
Yeah.
I'm like, just to know, this is blackberries, crushed rocks.
Yeah.
I'm like, no way.
Yeah. We got some granite. We got some granite up in there.
This is not from Virginia. But it is. I mean, I can't wait to taste it. But yeah, so
and the other thing I want to just point out that I learned at Chambers Street that I think is an important lesson for us all to learn, depending on what our perspectives are, is that when I first came to Chambers Street, I was very intimidated by a lot of mouthy, opinionated men who I worked with. And they all knew everything about everything. And I remember that one of the things that they loved Lyle Fast, I love you, Lyle. One of the things that like somebody like Lyle, let's talk about was, I went to this wine tasting last night. I went to this wine party last night. The wine of the night was this. Everything was hyperbolic. Everything was the best, right? And you obviously, I don't even have favorites and bests. So like that doesn't really speak to me.
That you speak of.
Yeah, I don't know. And,
exactly.
And so they were speaking about wine, though, still in a language that didn't quite resonate with me and didn't quite sit well with me.
This is fucking good, by
the
way.
Thank you. That's the Alluvium 2017 from Early Mountain.
I am way impressed with how far Virginia wines have come. I mean, this is...
Yes.
This will fuck. You put this in a blind tasting, this will fuck some people up.
A good ringer, right?
Yep, it's a good ringer bottle. But So they got the language of
they know everything about everything, even though they don't.
Well, that's the best line.
They just feel like a little bit more entitled to act like they do.
Well, listen, you got to act like, you said you got to take it, right? Like, that's like one of the best lines in, like, I think it was Psalm 2 or something. The woman, she's like, there's never been a business with so much bullshit in it as a wine business.
Like the idea that nobody ever goes, I don't know. Like, I love saying that to people. Like, I don't know. I don't read. Are you kidding me? Like, everybody's always ready with all this shit. So long story short, that was where I learned, that's where I found my voice. That's where I stopped worrying about being wrong. That's when I stopped caring to participate in the measuring, in the sort of the competition that those do, the bro competition. I said, this bro competition stinks. I know they really enjoy it, but I'm going to assert myself, but I'm not going to participate in this. And that was really important for me deciding what kind of wine voice I was going to have and how I was going to contribute to this industry.
Wow. That's.
You still thinking about that wine?
I'm really, it's like blueberry in here, blackberry.
That's
Like what is this? Amphora, concrete, French oak, partially new French oak.
This is Barrique, partially new, but usually we don't really use more than 20 or 30% new oak in any given vintage. Although obviously our barrel program is still growing because we're relatively new. This project really only was founded in about 2014-15, and it spends about 18 months in barrique and then a year in bottle.
Yeah, so knocked it out the park with the wines.
Thank you.
And everybody's brought great wine, but these are really, because they're from Virginia, they're really interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
these are, because I know some of the OGs, these are, wow.
Yeah, it's been really fun to introduce these wines. I mean, again, we may get into it later, but I was sort of there at the beginning of like the natural wine thing in New York, and that was all part of like introducing people to these wines.
Which you got some shit from, right? Like,
yeah.
You were on like page 7.
Yeah, page 6. I was page 7, page 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little, but yeah, like isn't like all coverage good coverage or something like that?
Oh yeah. There's no
Yeah.
there's no such thing as bad press.
Yeah. So no, I was happy to do that, and I like introducing people to wines and seeing their reactions that are often unexpected. Yeah.
So then you leave Chambers. Where happens after
I left
Chambers?
You know what? I left Chambers specifically to help open a wine store in Harlem. So I helped open the first high-end wine store in Harlem. It was called Harlem Vintage.
Still around?
Not really. It was sold, and now it's called Vintage Harlem, and it's owned by different people. So no, let's go with no. Mm-hmm. It's not still around. Mm-hmm. But worked with them for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. That was fantastic because that was sort of getting back to my roots. I had this Harlem roots, and even though Harlem was gentrifying by leaps and bounds in that moment, and it was a little disturbing at times, I felt like, I knew Harlem. I also knew how to talk to Black people in Harlem without talking down to them, but also exposing them to maybe something that wasn't part of their heritage in the home. And so it was just, for me, an opportunity to bring a lot of people together and bring a lot of threads together, maybe personally.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice. So then that project happens.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Which sounds like it would be. I mean, totally. I mean, actually, it's a convergence, right? Like there's a high-end store because it is being gentrified, but like you said, you had an opportunity to introduce people from the neighborhood to these other outlets and different libations.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about like having like a beautiful old Black dude from the neighborhood come in and say, "What wine should I drink? Can you make it sweet?" I'm like, well, I can make it kind of sweet, but I'm not going to make it that sweet. I mean, whatever that language is, and then having people taste like wine. Well, I like this Merlot. I'm like, well, that's not a sweet wine. That's just plummy and ripe and delicious.
Right. That's one of the hard, actually, that's pretty funny. That's one of the things with like, as a Black person, when I'm selling wine to a white person, I don't want anything sweet. I'm like, okay.
Why are you saying that to me?
Yeah, I mean, you need to understand how your palate works. So the tip of your tongue, first thing you're gonna get the fruit up front, but it's how it finishes what's gonna define the wine. Yeah. But anyway, that's always a fun one.
I had an interesting talk recently with Mary J. Blige about this because she just released her own wine this summer.
I know.
And she and I did a webinar recently where we talked wine and we talked about sort of she said I was just going for smooth, but her wines are bone dry.
They are bone dry.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really, in my opinion, they're very austere.
Oh, you think they're austere?
They're austere.
Oh, minerally.
No, austere.
Oh, okay. Austere.
Yeah. Minerally has some edges.
Even the Ramato, the Rosé?
Yeah, I had the Ramato and the Sauv Blanc. It just...
or they're that Dolomite fruit.
Yeah, I know.
Dolomitic.
Way down in the jungle.
Dolomitic.
A badass monkey stamped on a lion's tail.
Shut your mouth. Exactly. See, it's all connected.
It is all connected. The Dolomites. And Dolomite.
But anyway, we tasted these wines with 400 black women, and they liked them. And they like Mary, and they like the wines.
That's what I'm saying. Listen,
you know,
Snoop's selling a shit ton of wine. I ain't mad at him.
Yeah.
And it is it's a Friday wine. Let's put it that way.
Yes. You know, and at the same time, you know, bring on the sweetness too.
I'm unmad. I'm unmad. I love port. I love Sauternes.
Not even that. I mean, I like wines that are just off dry. That just have like a touch, like whatever.
People know. I mean, if you follow my Instagram feed, I love Paso Robles. People rail on Paso Robles, but like people do some nice things in Paso. They achieve a nice balance.
Can I tell you a story about Paso Robles?
Of course, you could tell me a story about Paso Robles.
You're gonna have to beep this, right?
No.
It's the only place I've ever been called.
Shut the front door.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what's funny? The only place I've ever been called that is New Jersey, where I grew up.
Oh, okay.
So
See? Not even Poughkeepsie. Nope.
That is funny. Like I tell you, I've been called 3 times to my face, or at least in a car driving
Just so
by.
you know, white people, we know every time that we've been called it directly or indirectly.
And they're all in Jersey.
Yes.
It's so funny.
Okay, for me, I had to go to California.
But I have a good friend
and
in
drink
Paso.
some isosceles.
Yeah, I have a good friend. I have a lot of good friends in Paso now, and they rail against, like, you know, they during the past election season there, they couldn't believe, they're like, these fucking people, man, like these Trump supporters. They're like, you know, like, I grew up with these people, and I'm like, what is, you know, so not even in Charlottesville.
Not even in Charlottesville.
I was going to say.
Closest was that somebody once leaned out of a pickup truck and called me brown sugar. That was it. I was like, okay.
I mean, it's not inaccurate. You do have a
Thank you.
Light
Sugary.
Brown,
Very brown, sugary.
Yeah, I was when you said you're bringing wines from Virginia, I was like, okay.
Damn, do we have any backup wine?
Do we have any tikis?
You guys got
do we have any tiki torches?
Look, I mean, that was hurtful. That was so hurtful to me because they were
your
on my
alma mater.
campus.
I know.
They were on my defiling the grounds of UVA.
Dave Matthews went to UVA, man.
No, he did not.
No, he didn't. He lives there now. He lives there.
Okay, so can I tell you about Dave Matthews?
And
I don't want to tell you too much about Dave Matthews because I don't work for them. But no,
he makes
kidding.
wine though, right?
Yes, he has an estate called Blenheim. Wonderful female winemaker there, and
I can't believe this shit is from Virginia.
It is Blenheim is directly across from Trump. So every time I go visit the winemaker at Blenheim at Dave Matthews' estate, I got to go right by the Trump estate. Which, by the way, they bought from the Kluge family, which really built up the estate. So they don't build anything; they just mostly ruin things, but they haven't ruined the estate yet. Long story short is Dave Matthews, I think is actually originally from Richmond, but he's from the area. He bought this estate in Charlottesville. He's been making wine there for like 10, 15 years, doing a really good job. They do a really, really nice job. Their wines are lovely. And he was like the campus band when I was at UVA.
That I knew he
was like
he
used to like play around campus.
That's what I heard. Like people like, you see that guy? He's for like
totally. My girlfriends were always trying to make out with him, and I was like, he named the band after himself. He just doesn't seem very creative to me.
But that was a black band, just like Sting. He had a black bass player.
Did you ask me my favorite musician?
I did. And
what
like,
did
I don't
say?
have one.
Sting is one of them. Sting is one of them.
I tell people all the time. You know who had the best jazz band in the late '80s? Sting. He had Branford.
No, I said I was having a Barry Gibb moment. But
you said, yes.
Sting is definitely one of my favorite.
He had Branford Marsalis. He had Hakeem.
Remember
He had a whole.
And then he went into that whole North African thing.
Right.
The Desert Rose moment.
Yeah. And I think that was the topic of the movie Get Him to the Greek, where he did the African Child, where the artist went off course and just.
Okay, I didn't watch that movie.
Yeah. I watch a lot of movies. You should check that one out. If you want to, you need a good laugh.
Russell Brand.
It's just a laugh.
Okay.
Just laugh.
It was like a follow up to the dating Sarah.
Diddy's in it.
Sarah Marshall.
Jonah Hill's in it. It's very funny.
Okay.
It's that whole Judd Apatow crew, who I think is pretty funny.
Okay, I'm open.
There is, you could say that's the equivalent of the white guy in the wine world, the white guy in the movie world, the Judd Apatow.
Right.
You could say that, but shit makes me laugh. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Especially when I'm drinking wine.
That's okay.
But this wine from Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was going to bring up some backup bottles, but then I read your bio and I was like, no, she's legit.
I'm not going to fuck this up.
No, you know.
I wouldn't work with any producer in Virginia. I'm only going to work with like one of the best.
So then like, how'd you worked for a restaurant group. How does one get a job with a restaurant group?
Well, don't know. I mean, I worked in a bunch of restaurants as a sommelier. Nick and Tony's during the summers. I worked at a restaurant called Provence that was owned by Vicky and Mark, who also have Cook Shop. I worked at Felidia for a hot second. Worked at Union Pacific. I worked at Gotham. I worked at Punch. So there was a lot of restaurants for a long time. And so I was just become this like solid sommelier professional, right? And then I would do stints in import, distributing, sort of supplier side as well. So well-rounded. But one summer I came back. I remember coming back from Italy, and I was looking for a job because, remember, I like to change my job once a year. And I went to talk to, and I did spend a few months working as a portfolio manager for Terry Thies. So Terry was one of my early mentors and supporters.
So there might be some people, although I have a really wine geeky following, which is good, but Terry Thies is he's iconic for importing originally German wines and
then ultimately Austrian and champagne.
And he broke my first
grower champagne.
Yeah, and he's the grower champagne guy, absolutely. Yeah. And he's his book is distributed. He's with Michael Skurnick, who we'd love to have Michael on the show. We reach out to Michael.
So I worked for Terry for a few months because actually what it turned out was that I had actually taken the job without asking any questions. Terry and I
I've done that before.
Yes. So I was lucky enough to win this scholarship to go travel with Terry in Austria. And so he and I traveled together. We had a fantastic time. I learned so much from him. And he said, as soon as I have an opening, I'm going to hire you. And so he hired me as his portfolio manager. I didn't ask any questions. And he was like, but I just need you to go talk to the Skurnick brothers. It's like a
Harmon and Michael.
Yeah. And I said, okay, what does that have to do with anything? And then I realized, oh my God, the structure of this company, and now the Skurnicks own the Thies portfolio outright.
Yeah.
But they had sort of newly purchased the rights to the Terry Thies portfolio. He was still the picker, and he was sort of the spiritual head.
Right.
But the Skurnicks owned it. So I took a job thinking I was working for Terry Thies. I was working for the Skurnicks
Harmon and Mike.
in Syosset, New York. So that's on the, I don't know, do we call that Mid-Island? That's a Long Island.
I have not spent a whole lot. I've just been on the East End, but I think Syosset is like Mid-Island.
We're going to call that Mid-Island, closer to the North Shore than the South. And it wasn't a good fit. It was not a good fit because it was just a lot of white people scratching each other's eyes out to get ahead. And so...
Was Wheeler still there when you were there?
Wheeler, look, you know what's really interesting about Skurnick? And I think the Skurnicks know this. I mean, the sales force is one thing. And, there's good salespeople and less good salespeople and people, Lerner and Wheeler and people like that. This was after Wheeler and Bowler, but Dan Lerner was still there. So as long as Dan Lerner was in the building, I was like, okay, this is going to be a decent place to work.
Right.
But, sales force is completely different than office corporate in-house force.
Right.
And the energy there wasn't a great fit for me, but I learned a lot of fucking shit when I was there. I was there for 4 months, and I learned a lot of shit. It toughened me up enormously.
I thought I was a job jumper. Oh my God. You're like 4 months.
And it was such a bad fit that I remember going to Michael and going, this isn't like working for me. And he goes, yeah, you seem miserable. And then I said, he goes, we could do the whole 2-week thing and blah, blah. He goes, you could just fucking leave today. He was like, get the fuck out. Don't let the door slam you in the ass.
But you know what? I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Just as an aside for you listening out there, what is this bullshit 2 weeks notice? 99% of employment in this country is at will. They don't give you 2 weeks, but if they just fucking fire you, why the fuck do you think you have to give somebody 2 weeks? Just leave. Just leave. Get the fuck up and go.
Yeah.
But that's so funny. He was like, yeah. He was like, yeah. It was like, yeah. I'm going to have to ask you not to come in anymore.
Yes, please. Empty your desk. I was like, wait, I thought I quit. No, it was cool. I mean, here's the thing.
Go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
It was an excruciating 4 months, and I had some really bizarre things happen to me while I was there that I'll put in the book. But
cool, because I still want you on the show, Mike. Because he's like, I'm not coming on that fucking show.
No. But I have tremendous respect for the Skurnicks. And, fucking Michael Skurnick, I think, was the first guy to introduce Beaujolais Nouveau to the New York market. He was the first boutique distributor.
Yeah, he had all the California cult shit. He had Turley. He had, he had all that shit. This again, this could be the most surprising wine of season 1 right now. Like
Alluvium 2017.
Well, the white as well, both of them. I mean, like this is stellar.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say that every Virginia is like that everywhere.
No, that's I know it's not. I mean,
there's 10 producers to keep an eye on.
Well, exactly. Wow, there's a whole 10. See,
but there's almost 300 producers altogether.
In Virginia?
Yes.
Well, see, that doesn't surprise me because I tell people, you get this, like, people like your family are like, oh, how's this wine? I'm like, oh.
Like, what wine are we talking about?
Just any wine. Just any wine.
Prosecco?
Yeah. Actually, come on, DOCG, Prosecco's from the Dolomites.
Yeah.
I've been rocking those lately.
That's right.
But no, just there's so much wine out there. Like people don't get how vast.
Oh, right. They think you know every single wine at their local shop.
And beyond that, just like I tell people, I'm like, the reality is there's a part of the wine business where it's just rich people that because they have a farm, they get a tax break.
Right.
like Connecticut wine. I lived in Connecticut. Went to this winery in Connecticut one time. Oh my God. Up in Litchfield somewhere. And I digress.
No, that's okay. I like this story.
Go to the tasting room, and I couldn't help myself. Like the label was shit. Like I was like, I'm there with my wife. I'm like, oh my God, this label's horrible. And I didn't even. It just like was just.
Was the wine any good?
The wine was horrible. First of all,
okay.
Like I mean,
that's consistent.
Yeah, it was consistent. The wine was like first of all like 60% of the grapes had come from Chile. It was because a lot of these states that really can't grow wine.
Yeah, they ship grapes around.
Right. It's really people don't understand. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But then the woman, the tasting room person was like, that label was designed by Donna Karen's graphic designer. I was like, well, you should have got someone who designs wine labels.
Right.
But, I say that story to say, like, there have been some OG producers in Virginia. Make sure you check out the show notes. But these wines are stellar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so.
Ben Jordan is the winemaker.
Back to you. Mm-hmm. Is he on Instagram? I gotta find Ben Jordan.
Mount Airy Vineyards.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So anyway, I hopped around a lot. There's a lot of jobs. People always go, "What happened next?" I'm like, I don't know.
No, but
I would have to look at a resume to know the sequence of my life.
But the problem is, like, I'm a few years older than you, but like people were told you got to stay at a job. Like, that's not true. Just be good. Like, I mean, you I got something here. It's time to move on. I got something here. Time to move on. Was there ever a time when you're doing all this bouncing around that you're like, thought about leaving the wine business?
No, not entirely that time. If anything, I'm closer to that now, although finding my way back in through Virginia. But no, this whole time I'm extremely passionate. I love the world community of wine. I'm in love with it in this moment. I wake up wanting to taste wine. I remember that moment. I'm not there anymore, but there was a moment in my life, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., I want to taste wine. Now I'm just like, do I have to taste wine today? It's also a function of age. I'm 49, and your body just doesn't bounce back.
You're not 49.
I'm 49.
I mean,
71 baby.
I mean, we did
71,
the math,
very good wine vintage. So yeah, like it's your body doesn't want that anymore. It's just like, ugh, I just want like 1 or 2 glasses with dinner, but I don't want to be tasting wine all day long.
No, I took a break because it's true. Like, it's people think, oh my God, you're a wine buyer. I'm like, motherfucker, after like the 200th wine in 4 hours.
Yeah, I mean, your teeth hurt. You're just,
your mouth is black, purple.
Yeah. You're not eating properly.
Like you're spitting, but you're still drunk through osmosis.
Yeah. So it's hard work.
It is. That was my joke. I was like, I am sacrificing my liver so you get to taste good wine.
Totally.
I just tell my customers.
No, I used to think about that, and people would always be like, are you a wine director or a beverage director? I'm like, I can't handle being a beverage director. That would mean I have to taste tequila and mezcal and scotch. And, like, oh my God, that's just too much. It's enough to even look at grappa because it's made from grapes. So, but anyway, so, no, there wasn't a moment during this time. I was in it. I was so, as somebody that sort of stumbled into wine and really thought she was going to be in food and service, once it grabbed me, and I couldn't quit it for years. For 10, 15 years, I was obsessed.
That was not a hit it and quit it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a hit it and
No,
quit
I loved it. But within the arena of wine, I could do all these different things. What led me to being a wine director is that, well, first, it was a really important job for me. I worked for Louis Dresner, wine importer, for about 4 years.
Another icon. Oh, you put in some work there, though.
Yes, because I found my people.
Okay.
Yeah, I think up until this point, I was still defining my ethos and still finding my village in a village. It's funny. The larger wine industry I'll always love everybody in it. Somebody like Dustin Wilson or Robert Bohr, we come at wine very differently, but they're my people.
It's game recognized game.
Yeah, it's just they're my people.
Yep.
Yep. But then once I drilled down a little bit and I really found like that little sub-core group, the natural wine business in late 90s, early aughts, when it was emerging in New York, had already sort of taken hold in Paris and the Loire Valley and places like that. It was this motley crew of bizarre, dynamic, interesting people. It was somebody like me, black woman, next to Jorge, Puerto Rican guy from the Lower East Side, next to David Lilly, former jazz musician from fucking Rhode Island or wherever he's, Connecticut or where, it was like you found these people, you had nothing ostensibly in common with them,
right.
but your heart spoke to each other.
And that's something about wine.
Yeah.
That like you get in a room and once there's this moment where you belong. Like
yes.
You find your crew.
Yes.
Like it is it's just it's I think it's the perfect beverage for bringing down barriers and walls, because we are tribal people. We get into cliques, but like there's this where you're like, oh my God, you like wine, I like wine.
Yeah.
We look completely different, but we love wine.
Yes.
And they're over there,
Yeah.
and they talk about wine, and we're gonna make fun of them in a little way. But and that's what it is. It is like you said. But then you start seeing people around. You're like, you get the nod. You get the nod. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It used to be only we know about the black nod,
Right, exactly.
So there's a black nod, people, but then there's a wine nod,
Right.
too. And
and that's a great song. Put this in the show notes. Because it's actually Virginia related. Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah. RVA.
Mad Skills.
Okay.
1993.
Oh.
The Nod Factor. One of the dopest hip hop tracks ever. The Nod Factor.
Huh. Do I know
I got
it?
your head nodding because your neck knows it's fat. Break it down like this and then like that.
Sounds familiar, but
Oh
maybe
yeah,
I need to hear the song.
I'll play it for you when we're done taping
Okay,
it.
good.
And it's gonna be in the show notes. The Nod Factor. Mad Skills. Richmond RVA.
RVA. That's how it's going down now.
It is how it's going down now. It's
Yeah.
RVA, and they got with the DMV.
Yes, the DMV, the
DC,
RVA.
yeah,
it's all on the come up. And hey, by the way, I also do a holler to my friends in Maryland, Old Westminster, making a winery, making really nice wines in Maryland.
What are they?
And in fact, I've become a bit of an East Coast acolyte at this point.
Well, listen. If you're fucking with people, I want to see who you're fucking with. Cause back when I started in '97, there was some stuff in the Finger Lakes. There was a few things, but it is really good to see. Thank you, climate change, for these emerging wine regions.
And also, thank you, hybrid grape varieties. That's a little bit of something, too.
No, that definitely is the
people
science.
getting off their high horse about hybrids, I think, is also going to bring this all into focus. But anyway, so I worked for Louis Dresner for 4 years. They were my family. They still are. And I went from family to family. And then Andrew Tarlow was my biggest client as a customer, on-premise customer. And so then I segued from working for Dresner to working for Tarlow. And he had never had a wine director before. He, I don't think he ever really trusted somebody to do the job. But he and I had spent 4 years working together as client-customer. So we trusted each other. And so I was able to step into that job. And at that point, we were building a hotel in Williamsburg, the Wythe Hotel. And, he had 3 or 4 restaurants, was opening 5 or 6. There was a lot going on. So there was, it was really fun. It was really great. And I worked for him for about another 4 years.
Okay. And then, you mentioned earlier, I said, have you ever thought about leaving the business? So you worked for about 4 years, and when did your relationship with the Tarlow Group end?
Well, I guess 2016, I threw this wine festival, this wine salon called the Big Glue. There had never been, in Europe, there was this whole circuit of natural wine fairs. And those of us who lived in New York often were lucky enough to go over to these wine fairs. They sort of, the hub was the Loire Valley, but they were sort of spread out throughout from Austria to northern Italy to the south of France. And we would all go to these natural wine fairs, and now our community is growing to all these people in Europe, but we all love the same wines and we all love the same producers. And they were really great spaces of conviviality and fellowship. And we didn't have anything like this here. In New York and in the United States, wine festivals were, they're either consumer-based festivals, which are easy, but there weren't like geeky festivals that were also like super chill and relaxed. And so I wanted to create that. And with Guillaume, who has a wine import firm called Selection Massal, we decided to partner and create a wine salon in the vein of a Dive Bouteille from the Loire Valley. We brought over 100 producers and did it over 2 days in 2016. And lucky enough, I was working at the Wythe Hotel, so we had a hotel space to do it in. And it was fantastic. And then, of course, as soon as I did it, I was just like, yeah, I probably don't want to do it again. But that was really fun. Other people would have taken it. It would have been a branding moment. You would have had big glues in every city, Austin, New York, Chicago. I'm just like, that was great. Okay, I'm good. But it's okay, because right after that, Raw came, Brumaire, came Third Coast Swath in Chicago. Like they all started to build after that. So I felt like my work was done. I part the Red Sea, and then I let people come through. Me and Moses. Was it Moses who parted the sea? Okay, he did.
It was. It was.
I'm a good church girl. I should know this stuff.
I know this stuff.
Grew up in the Baptist church.
So what have you been doing since 2016?
You know what? Honestly, just getting back to me a little bit. I mean, this industry is a little treacherous, and, physically, I felt really run down. I felt like I needed a moment. At the same time, my personal life demanded that I become a guardian for my niece. Oh, wow. And so I became a homemaker in a different kind of way. Most of us don't really make homes when we work in hospitality.
No, that's
our home is the restaurant or the hotel.
Totally.
And so needing to dial back and take care of things that I hadn't really been taking care of, and make a home for my niece, and really become, like kind of a parent. So that was sort of the focus for a while. And also physically getting my life together. And that's kind of where, the segue that I would like to make is that I am, when I said I'm a self-proclaimed wellness geek, it's more that I realized how run down I was for a really long time. I know that that's not my natural state of being. I grew up super physically and athletically active, and I love this industry, but we have to do a better job of keeping people in balance.
I do videos because that's why I left the industry, because I was used to weigh like 140 pounds, dripping wet, holding a brick, and then I woke up one day 3 years later and I weighed 188 pounds.
Yeah.
Foie gras and fucking sauternes for breakfast will do that shit to you.
Yeah.
The excess. And I really enjoyed the hedonist lifestyle of this.
Yeah.
And people don't get, like, it is, and even looking at you now, like, doing the research, you don't look like you did in 2014. Like, I can see that you have shifted a lot of things and transformed your life. So, yeah, I mean, and I do these videos when I'm working out, and people DM me like, thanks for, we can't just be drinking wine all day. So talk about some of the things that you've done to help transform your well-being.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things I did was I ran a half marathon, because I've always been a runner, but I'm not very goal-oriented. So, a marathon seemed ridiculous. It still does to me.
It's stupid. I ran in college and high school. I quit halfway through college, but and the most I ever ran was a half marathon. That was too much.
But the half marathon was good. That was my sweet spot. I'm sure I'll do another one. So I did that, and then I just started working out with a trainer that touches my heart all the time. Like,
what type of workouts do you do?
He is so undercompensated by me, because he is my therapist and my trainer. To tell you the truth, so one of the things I worked out about how I best work out physically is that, number one, it has to be fun. And number two, the 2 or 3 things that I did when I was a kid that made me the most happy physically, are the 2 or 3 things I actually need to be doing as an adult, but maybe in a modified manner.
100.
So we actually do tumbling and gymnastics because I was a gymnast as a kid.
Ah.
Yeah.
BWG gets the inside info that wasn't in the Bon Appetit.
There you go. Yeah.
No, that I hear you. Like, yeah, I used to be when I stopped and when I took a break, I was a personal trainer for a while.
Wow, really?
Martial arts, kickboxing, yeah, and because I always wanted to do martial arts. You know, Bruce Lee movies.
Mm-hmm.
And just with my dad growing up watching boxing, Muhammad Ali, I just like. I don't like hitting people, but I like striking. I do like hitting things.
Yeah.
It's very, very manly for me.
It's cleansing.
But it's actually, it's a really good workout because to be a fighter, a boxer, you have to be strong, you have to be flexible, you have to have endurance, you have to have speed.
Yeah.
So it brings together a lot of the elements that will make you better in life. And also, you have to be smart. Like people think boxers are dumb. Like they may be big, but like the perception of where someone's going to do, the micro expression of someone's face, like really, and there's a lot of crossover. I mean, like with wine. I mean, wine is it's making these distinctions, right? So, but yeah, working out. I don't like the term working out. I train or I practice. It needs to be fun because
you just need to be active every day.
Yeah.
Like whatever that looks like to you, like just be active every day. Like, you know, there are things that we do in our houses, whether it's vacuuming or sweeping or moving things around. Like we're always like looking for other ways to offload it. And I get it. Like we're tired. We want to do this shit. But every day I get up and I sweep my back deck, right? Because that's just, it's an activity. Like I could get a leaf blower, but like, that's so stupid. So, you know, you don't
live in the suburbs like I do. You need a motherfucking leaf blower.
No, I live in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
I have a small.
And I have a small.
It's not even really a deck. It's
I have a
it's made from
patio.
cement.
I have a patio, which pisses me off because I have like the no backyard. All my neighbors, I have backyard envy. But shit, I got all the fucking leaves. That's for damn sure.
That's right.
But
so yeah, I
that's
like staying active
work.
all the time.
But like that might be more. I'm like I'm not gonna do kettlebells today. I'm gonna go rake leaves, and it feels. Working out.
If you don't hate raking leaves, then rake leaves. Well, it's like a meditative.
Well, it is meditative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like raking leaves.
Yes, but if you don't like, don't do it.
My particular training I do strength training with kettlebells. Like I believe in lifting heavy weights every day. Like
that's great. Strength training is everything.
I remember like when I first moved back here in 2010, we had these huge blizzards and like shoveling snow was easy because of my workout. I was like, oh, this is like So you're right. There is this thing people need to understand that we're designed to move every day, like we are agricultural people,
yes.
or we're craftsmen, or the blacksmith. Like people used to work.
That's right.
And there is a connection between your hands and your brain and the stimulating and growth, and some of these things that we think are like beneath us because we have money. I'll just pay someone to are really good for you. Like say they're therapeutic, they're meditative. And they're a part of who we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're doing well and you hate doing something, there's no reason to do it, right? But there's other things that we just sort of decide that we shouldn't be doing them, and I just don't buy into that. I think that we should be moving every day in a lot of varied sort of ways. I shouldn't have to avoid using like the cast iron skillet because I don't want to lift it out of the whatever. Like you should be able to lift a Dutch oven.
Yeah, that's about 5 pounds. So you're right. You should be able to lift a Dutch
yes.
oven. 100%.
Out of the New York apartment cabinet, which is always curved into the left. We don't have the same storage y'all have in the suburbs.
No, but I lived in New York City. So,
yeah.
So I
Where did you live when you were in New York?
Oh, come on, Manhattan. I ain't fuck around.
Okay.
Lived on the Upper West Side.
You did?
I lived on West 72nd Street, and
nice.
then I moved over to the East Side, moved to East 93rd, and then I moved to California.
Oh.
So, yeah, that's how I roll.
Northern.
No, Southern, Santa Barbara.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I
was in Santa Barbara
Santa Barbara
before it was like really hip. This was I moved to Santa Barbara in 1999. So, nice. I mean, what I think is funny when you look at like Santa Barbara's up and coming in '97, and now and like now it's still up and coming, it's still burgeoning,
Well, in my alter ego lives in a Nancy Meyers movie in Santa Barbara, so
Oh,
I do like
that's that
that
Alec Baldwin movie. That's that Alec Baldwin movie.
That's right.
What is that one?
It's complicated.
It is complicated, and I love movies like I remember like I had just left the biz when Sideways came out, and I knew every fucking wine. I knew everybody there, and I knew the wine consultant. I was like, shit, if I hadn't left the wine business, I'd have been the wine consultant. Like,
That's right.
Fuck Brad.
You would have been at the Hitchin Post pouring some wine.
Fuck Brad Yanagwa, who's not even listening to my podcast, but Brad had a little wine brokering business, and I guess he was the coolest guy. I was like, I was really cool than Brad.
I'm so much cooler than him.
But no, I did. The first time I went to Santa Barbara, we went to the Hitching Post.
That's right.
Like I went to
we all did.
I went to Hitching Post in
Drink
1999.
and drink some full-on Pinot Noir.
Highliner, bro. You know? And he went to the windmill. Like
Sanford.
That whole movie, I was like, oh my God, this was like first time I visited Santa Barbara.
Sea Smoke.
Sea Smoke wasn't around when I was there. We had Blackjack Ranch. We had,
no, it was good.
Brewer
Clifton.
Brewer Clifton. Love.
Those were the days.
Love. Those guys used to come into my restaurant.
Which is what?
It was the Montecito Wine Bistro, which is now closed. It was on Coast Village Road. It's now, it's not closed. It's like a Mexican restaurant. But, and the guy who started that, he had worked with Doug over at, what's the one? The iconic one. See what happens when you drink wine during the day, people?
That's okay.
It was the wine cask.
Oh, the wine cask, yeah.
Yeah, so everybody knows the wine cask, but Bill had worked at the wine, and he worked there, and he was like, fuck you, Doug. And he started the Wine Bistro, which is in Montecito, which was on Coast Village Road, which is right by Butterfly Beach, which is right down the street from the Four Seasons Biltmore. So, like, yeah, I've had a good time in the wine business, selling wine to really cool people, and
but I mean, I love Santa Barbara. I think it's lovely.
Listen,
and Oprah's there.
If I have the money, now. That is.
Oprah hasn't left her compound since March.
Let me tell you something about Oprah. The dumb ass move I made. So I was teaching kickboxing and studying martial arts, and one of the women I work with, she's like, hey, Stedman's coming to speak at my church on Christmas.
Stedman. He's like Madonna or Prince.
Stedman was coming to speak at her church on Christmas, and I was like, of course Oprah showed up and talked for fucking an hour. I blew my Oprah moment.
Yeah, but I don't know if I can get through a Stedman talk. I'm gonna be honest.
Well, that was my thing. I was like,
seems pretty dry.
I was like, actually, I heard Stedman speak a few years later, and he actually is very good because you think like, is Oprah gonna fuck with a real? She's so fucking with him. He gotta have something.
Well, or it's a yin and yang thing, and it's all Oprah all day long, and Stedman is
well, it is all Oprah.
Little milquetoast.
But I think he's milquetoast to her. Wow. This is going to be funny who listens to this. Milquetoast to her, but he, in his own right, he's a powerful, Stedman was a badass. He was a good speaker, but yeah, my thing was like, I'm not going to listen to Stedman. And then Oprah showed up.
He seems like the Wim Hof of like positivity.
So let me ask you, what do you like? I texted you. He's like, I'm a lone gun. I'm a gun for hire. What are you working on? I mean, you got this project. What else are you
working on this Virginia thing, and looking to a couple of possible new projects in the new year with hospitality groups. I mean, God, I don't know. I mean, people have approached me about putting together programs for them in the new year, and so that means that people are still optimistic about opening restaurants.
Well, I mean, listen to some of the stories that people have been on here. People with money will have money, so they can wait till 2022 and gear up. So I think there is a great opportunity for you there to work with people who.
Well, and I also think that for the moment, I don't think it's going to be a sommelier market because I just think that people are going to try to do more with less for a long time.
Oh, for sure.
And and we became a little, the sommelier trade became a little bit blown up for a while.
Thank you for saying that. I mean, like, when I had Andre on, he said I did the first level of everything. I mean, it was interesting working in California and Santa Barbara in wine country, and I was a sommelier. I was on the floor selling wine. And I do love that when Raj says that and Fred says that. Fred, you got a lot of problems now, but the question of
Fred Price? Who?
Fred Dame.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
But exactly. But the definition, like, a sommelier sells wine on the floor of a restaurant. Like, when you see people like, I got this certificate, have you fucking sold wine on the floor of a restaurant?
Yeah, and I mean, it's so funny when So when people say, "Are you a sommelier?" I'm like, I don't know. I am.
That's me. I'm like, I was.
I kind of feel like I am because I worked for a long time on the floor.
Exactly.
And so once a sommelier, always a sommelier. Like it
Right.
never really is like a
once
muscle
Marine,
memory.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But I also remember the time that my cousin put me in my place. So I have this cousin, Janet, and she is Canadian born, but now lives in Switzerland with her Swiss husband. And
No, you're not a child of any privilege.
no privilege. And so she said to me, "So what are you doing with your life?" I said, "I'm a sommelier. I'm a sommelier. You know what that is? You live in Europe." And she goes, "So you're a server? You're a restaurant server?" And I said, "No, I'm a sommelier." She goes, "Well, I know what a sommelier is, and that's a restaurant server. Is that what you're doing with yourself?"
See, if I were you, I would have dropped the B. I would have been B. I don't think you really know.
No, but like that.
But it is.
It's that kind of shit
true.
that
She
you're like, you know
you.
what?
She did check
I work
you.
in a restaurant,
Exactly.
and I am a server.
Right.
And I mostly serve wine, but sometimes I serve
But
whatever's in
the chef's like,
yeah, whatever the
this
chef
out the
gives
table.
to me.
You become the expediter.
That's
That I
right.
was an expediter as well. So yeah.
So yeah, I think that for me, being a sommelier and loving wine has always been through the lens of service, and so there is a part of me that will always need to be connected to restaurants because the opportunity to share wine with people, especially in the context of food, which I think is the most important, I feel is an honor. And in a city like New York, and especially I also felt like I experienced this when I worked in the Hamptons, people are so ambitious and they work so hard and they're so taxed that I love being that little space of respite. I love being like when the captain of industry like lets loose and just relaxes and stops trying to impress. You know, that moment when he stops quizzing you and you're like, it's okay, I'm a professional.
Right.
You know, whatever they need to do, when everybody
Right.
just relaxes, like dials it back. I love being in that space with people. It's very intimate space. And I feel like it's a space of honor and it's a space of humanity. And so I think that's what I'm always trying to get to with wine.
Wow, we're going to end right there. That was beautiful. This is not scripted. That was amazing. That was awesome. Lee, thank you so much.
My
Tell
pleasure.
people where they can find you, how they can be a part of what you're doing.
You know, I'm not very active on social media, but if you want to really find me, @bewitchinglee, Lee, is my handle on IG, on Instagram. And otherwise, whatever, just Google me. I'm around.
That is so awesome. Hey guys, this was a really fun conversation for me. And, we talk about who we want to have on this show, who we're bringing to the fore. So once again, until the next time, cheers to the Mavericks, philosophers, deep thinkers. You've hit all those. And of course, you are a wine drinker. Thank you very much. It's your boy MJ, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.